There's one thing I really wanted to take a look at is the parry mechanic, and if there's one thing the trailer luckily gives us is the fact that it runs at 60 FPS, and we could actually get super greasy and start seeing what the recovery times is on some of the parry stuff, the perfect parry and the regular parry, to see how it works. The big difference is that a lot of people are like, oh, it's just like Ryu's parry in Street Fighter 5. We'll talk about it. Yeah, let's pull up some footage. The commentator match footage is actually like the best stuff we could use to break down what's going on. So yeah, there's some interesting stuff with the parry where people are thinking it acts like Ryu's in Street Fighter 5, but Ryu's parry in Street Fighter 5 is actually really bad, right? Like, he goes into a pose, he does this thing, and shockingly, when Ryu hits his pose and he nails that parry, this dude cannot act for a shocking amount of time, right? He is sort of stuck in this animation and recovery. He can hit you after, right? But it's completely different than another character in the game that has a parry that acts a bit more similar to Street Fighter 3. And that's Gil. When Gil lands a parry, it's a big deal. Gil lands a parry, he's getting one of these, you know? He's getting like full crazy launcher into whatever he wants, because Gil's parry recovers like a Street Fighter 3 parry. It recovers super fast. I think Alex is also, because Alex has a weird sort of parry, right? Alex also is a very similar way. I think the parry is a bit more similar to Street Fighter 3 and less Street Fighter 5 Ryu parry, you know? I think they're doing stuff that is actually gonna make the parry good again. And there's a really good observation about this that Alex Valle immediately said, because for anybody that doesn't know, for anybody that's curious, the Fireball game in Street Fighter 3, the 3 series, as well as Street Fighter 3 Third Strike especially, the Fireball game is destroyed. For a majority of characters, there is no reason to throw fireballs in neutral a lot of the time, unless you're just getting good at the game, right? Figuring out how to play it. All they do is just feed meter to your opponent. Right? You parry stuff and you get a big chunk of bar. And you're like, oh man, thanks. Nom 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 nom. Keep throwing fireballs at me. Throw some EX fireballs at me. The best thing you can do with a fireball in Street Fighter 3, even at like a mid-level, is hope it catches somebody off guard and it lands. And you're like, okay, cool. I threw a fireball and God bless it. But it looks like, and it seems like, at least right now, it's kind of the same thing in Street Fighter 6. If you're in neutral and you're throwing fireballs at somebody, you're essentially feeding them V-gauge, right? You're giving them free meter to do crazy stuff. The only difference now is that the action of parrying is just take V-gauge to use. And we don't know exactly how V-gauge works. We don't know exactly how fast it recharges. All we know is that it recharges from parrying. Did I say V-gauge? I meant drive gauge. The game actually wants you to go for this stuff. They are wanting you to utilize this resource and make a choice between defensive and offensive stuff. And it's going to come back, right? It will return. But that essentially eliminates fireballs, right? Like, and especially considering, and there's a couple of really good examples. There's two different types of parries in Street Fighter 6. There is a traditional parry where it seems like you just hold these buttons down and you just enter a parry state. Let me pull up a dang old video. And it's the perfect example of the hold down parry, right? Imagine, to me it seems like, imagine if you had a focus attack, and that focus attack just would absorb stuff, and your character just goes bing, 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 bing. I guess kind of like Alex in Street Fighter 5, right? How Alex assumes a pose, and he'll start parrying shit and stuff like that. Sort of similar. This is the perfect example right here of the parry system in action when you're just holding it down. I'm willing to bet money that my baby will run up and give me a sock. Honey, can I have this sock? Thank you. This is the perfect example of the parry being held down, where this isn't Luke like pressing each button, each parry every single time the guy hits him. Right? He's going for low parries, he's going for mid parries, he's going for high parries, like all that kind of stuff. That is not what's happening here. Right? That is not what's happening here. He's just essentially holding this button down and entering a parry state, and when you do that, seemingly, your drive gauge goes down. It more resembles like a very easy parry, right? How like you're gonna deplete meter from the gauge to enter like the parry state and start hitting stuff. but the reward is only so good. Why would you do that versus blocking normally? Well, because if you parry, if you choose to do this, you're going to hit them on recovery. Things that normally would be like plus on block are not anymore, right? That's the whole reason behind parrying. You're essentially committing to like a stance. It's reversal edge. Yeah. That's my assumption, is that this is like reversal edge. That's a perfect way of describing it. But there is a caveat to this. And the caveat shows up later in the trailer, right here. Right here, the perfect parry, right? So here's my my theory on an arcade stick of what's going on. Theory is that, let's just say parry is like the two mediums. What you saw Luke do, he just does this. I'm just gonna hold the buttons down, and the gauge is gonna go down, and I'm gonna choose when to let it go and then attack you, right? Or choose to do something after, which you can do, because you can do an attack out of a parry. Just holding stuff down. Because we've already seen that parry is, you can hold it down. My assumption is that the perfect parry is sort of like similar to third strike timing, but you still have to press it like you still have to press it like Ryu does in Street Fighter V. So it's a tap, right? Perfect parry is like, bink, right? You're gonna bink, hit these things. Why do I think it's that way? Because the game gives you a huge cinematic reward, right? The perfect parry probably is going to cost less meter. And you see this situation, right, where Ryu practically cancels out of his animation and goes directly into this huge splash flourish kind of thing, you know? This big moment does not happen when you do the regular parry. It doesn't. So the perfect parry most likely is going to cost either very little or almost nothing, because it's going to reward you with this big moment, this big flourish. And here's the stuff that I love. The fact that they are taking moments out of gameplay now. Right? They are specifically looking for these big moments in gameplay that solidify something cool has just happened. Take a look. Something cool has just happened. Check this thing out. Is it 1 frame? It probably is like 5 frames or something. It's probably like a big chunk, just like Street Fighter 3 is. But the biggest difference in this game is, and we don't know, is there crushes, right? Is there essentially focus attack crush moves that will break through parries and stuff like that? Does that actually exist? It would be a lot like MK11. It would be, especially with the what's it called, faultless defense that they have in MK11. It would be like that if you did a perfect guard. If the perfect guard in MK11 looked cool in any way, it doesn't look cool. That's my biggest gripe with MK11, is that when you do like a really cool parry, it doesn't look cool at all. It just goes thunk. Right? The flawless block doesn't have any cool flourish like this at all, even though it's a very important part of the game. This stuff is important. You need to make people feel cool about doing this. And what does this do as a result? Well, this allows the player to react to things. If there's one thing that people have an issue with in Street Fighter 3, the 3 series, when you land parries, what to do after is a big thing that they don't know, like how to take advantage of that shit, right? It happens so fast and so quick. You don't know which normals you should do. You don't know if you should go for stand HP uppercut. Like, there are so many moments and different things that change that situation. But if you have a moment that slows down time, if you have a moment that does this, bam, bam, I'm just gonna get a big hit out of it. I've landed the thing that I risked doing, right? I took a risk, it worked. Whoa, I got the thing, bam, bam, bam. I'm gonna do super or whatever, right? The cool part is that the game is setting up for those moments, is all I'm trying to say. Is that parrying is a big moment thing in Street Fighter games, and they're trying to set up for that stuff. Very similar to Guilty Gear's counter. Yes, it is. But it looks like there's no big counter thing. Right? At least as of right now, there is no giant, like, crush counter sort of moment or situation that the trailer sets up for, at least yet. And to be honest, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope that Street Fighter 6 is not a traditional strike throw fighting game. My hope is that they sort of go away from the super insane, like, RPS meta that has sort of made its way into a lot of fighting games with close range throws and stuff like that, where it's like, hey, if you whiff the throw, this is what happens. If you have to choose in this situation to just take the throw, because if you don't, it leads to crush counter, right? Just accept, like, that moment happens a lot now in a lot of the big strike throw fighting games, right? Guilty Gear, Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, obviously, right? It's a big element. All I'm saying is that I hope they go away from that, right? I hope throws aren't insanely powerful in this game, like super. They lead to all this crazy stuff. I hope that actually does not happen. I hope it sort of goes back to what Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter 3, even going back to the Alpha series. I hope it goes back to something like that, right? where you engage with your opponents in a different way instead of just making the way you open people up is by getting them to throw. We'll see. It could absolutely be that way. It could just be, once again, another strike throw fighting game. We'll see what happens. But these moments are very cool, you know? These moments are awesome to look at.